Did you kill Laquanta Edwards?
What brought you in here today?
Did you do what you're accused of?
Do you have anything to say to the family or the family of the victim?
Do you have anything to say to the community? To your family? Do you have anything to say?
New tonight, we're hearing from a friend and former co-worker of a woman who was murdered in Beaumont last week. Laquanta Edwards was found stabbed to death near Tyrrell Park on Friday. Xavier Horace says he used to work with Edwards at George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. Horace tells us she was a mother and her children were the most important thing in the world to her. He describes Edwards as someone who would do anything for her friends.
Very inviting and funny. She's very kind and she'll just give you the shirt off her back if she could. She's just an all-around nice person, genuine person.
On December 5th, 2025, the body of Laquanta Edwards, a 33-year-old woman from Houston, Texas, was discovered along Front Drive near Tyrrell Park Road in Beaumont. She had sustained multiple stab wounds, and investigators determined she had not died at the location where she was found. As detectives worked backward, digital records, witness statements, and physical evidence led them to an apartment on Ashley Street, revealing a timeline that crossed city lines and raised immediate questions about her final hours. Within days, Thaddeus McCray, age 34, was taken into custody and charged with murder. Authorities set bond at $1.5 million, citing the severity of the crime and the evidence collected. While the arrest provided a suspect, the case itself exposed deeper concerns about prior behavior, missed warning signs, and how events unfolded before law enforcement ever arrived at the scene.
In Southeast Texas, I'm Cameron Burchett. Claydra has the night off. We begin with breaking updates after a woman's body was found this morning. Beaumont police have identified a suspect. 34-year-old Thaddeus McCray is facing a murder charge. He surrendered to police today after he was found on Euclid Street. The case covered 3 scenes today. The 6500 block of Front Road near Tyrrell Park, where 33-year-old Laquanta Edwards' body was found. The 2300 block of Ashley Avenue, where her car was found. And a house down the block is where officers are still searching a home. Investigators say they found evidence a crime was committed there.
Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Laquanta Edwards, 33, resided in Houston, Texas. Though at the time of her death, investigators traced parts of her movements to Beaumont, Texas. Born and raised in Houston, Edwards grew up in a household with her parents and 2 siblings. Her early life was described as stable, with consistent family support and involvement in local schools. Her upbringing included a strong emphasis on responsibility, maintaining relationships, and community participation. Edwards maintained close ties with immediate family members, particularly her mother and siblings, often seen as a central figure within her familial network. She was a mother of 1 child, taking primary responsibility for daily care and upbringing. Observers familiar with her routines noted that she balanced work obligations with parenting duties, managing childcare, transportation, and household needs with regularity. Professionally, Edwards had a steady employment history, holding positions that required consistent attendance and reliability. Her daily routine typically involved commuting from her residence in Houston to her workplace, with stops for childcare and errands as needed. Outside of work, her social circle was small but consistent, consisting mainly of family, close friends, and community acquaintances. Her lifestyle patterns reflected regularity and stability, without any documented associations with criminal activity. In the weeks prior to her death, some changes in her personal life were reported by family and friends. Investigators noted adjustments in her work schedule, shifts in daily routines, and intermittent communication gaps with close contacts. While no major conflicts were publicly reported, sources indicated minor interpersonal stressors that may have affected her recent activities. Investigators reconstructed Edwards' movements leading up to December 5, 2025, using witness accounts, phone activity, and digital location data. On December 4th, she was confirmed to have left her residence in Houston, traveling toward Beaumont. Her last confirmed in-person interactions included a brief meeting with a family member in the morning and a conversation with a friend via phone in the late afternoon. Phone activity patterns suggest Edwards maintained communication with multiple contacts throughout the day. Investigators analyzed call logs and messaging timestamps to establish a timeline of her movements. Vehicle use was documented through eyewitness accounts and digital location tracking. She was seen driving a personal vehicle along primary roadways connecting Houston and Beaumont. Witnesses close to Edwards reported no unusual behavior immediately preceding her disappearance. However, minor deviations from her established routine were observed, including unscheduled stops and slight delays in expected communications. These deviations, though subtle, became focal points for investigators as they attempted to reconstruct her final hours. The timeline leading to her death contains gaps that investigators emphasized. These gaps include unverified locations between her last confirmed sighting and the discovery of her body, periods of inactivity on her phone, and missing surveillance coverage in certain transit areas. Analysts used these gaps to focus search efforts and identify potential points of encounter with the suspect. On December 5, 2025, law enforcement received a report of a deceased individual located along Front Drive near Tyrrell Park Road in Beaumont, Texas. The discovery occurred in the early morning hours, with first responders arriving shortly after notification. Upon arrival, officers observed Edwards' body positioned partially along the roadside, consistent with an outdoor assault scenario. The condition of the scene indicated the victim had sustained multiple stab wounds. Emergency personnel confirmed the absence of defensive injuries beyond those related to the stabbing. No immediate evidence of a struggle with additional participants was identified on site. Personal belongings, including a person phone, were missing from the scene. Initial observations suggested that the body had been moved from a prior location, as blood patterns indicated relocation and inconsistent pooling relative to the surrounding terrain. Emergency medical technicians on site confirmed that Edwards was deceased. Law enforcement secured the perimeter, preserving physical evidence while forensic specialists began documentation procedures. Preliminary conclusions by investigators noted the potential for a targeted attack, with timing, location, and method suggesting premeditation or opportunistic engagement. Forensic teams conducted a detailed analysis of the scene along Tyrrell Park Road. Evidence recovered included trace amounts of blood, fibers, and biological material likely transferred during the assault. Investigators documented the distribution and pattern of bloodstains, noting irregular pooling and drag marks indicative of body movement postmortem. The absence of personal belongings suggested deliberate removal or theft, though investigators did not initially rule out relocation for concealment. Environmental factors, including low lighting, vegetation density, and weather conditions, complicated collection but were accounted for in forensic procedures. Teams used high-resolution photography, 3D scanning, and field notes to ensure accurate documentation of the scene and all items of interest. Signs indicated the body had been moved from the original location of the assault. Blood spatter analysis and terrain evaluation suggested the primary attack likely occurred elsewhere, with transport to the roadside location intended to delay discovery. Forensic documentation also included evaluation of surrounding environment, collection of soil samples, and potential trace evidence that could link a suspect to the scene. Investigators systematically cataloged all findings, prioritizing the preservation of evidence for analysis in a controlled laboratory setting. Investigators also coordinated with additional units to examine nearby areas for discarded items, surveillance cameras, and possible witness accounts. All recovered evidence was processed according to standard protocol, with chain of custody procedures strictly enforced. The combined analysis of Edwards' background, final movements, discovery, and forensic evidence provided the initial framework for the broader investigation. By detailing her routines, personal relationships, and minor behavioral changes, investigators established a baseline for her expected activities, allowing for the identification of anomalies in her final hours. The discovery site and surrounding environmental analysis offered insight into the sequence of events, supporting early hypotheses regarding body movement, the timing of the assault, and potential suspect behavior. This structured examination of Laquanta Edwards' life and last movements laid the foundation for the next stages of the investigation, including suspect identification, legal proceedings, and broader community impact. Each piece of evidence contributed to a growing understanding of the events leading to her death, guiding law enforcement toward potential leads while preserving the integrity of the ongoing inquiry. After the discovery of Laquanta Edwards' body on Flint Drive near Tyrrell Park Road, investigators immediately turned to digital forensics to establish a timeline of her final movements. Law enforcement obtained her mobile phone records, including GPS location pings, call logs, and text message metadata. The data indicated that she had been active in multiple locations in the hours leading up to her death. Analysts plotted her movements over time, showing that she had traveled from her residence in Houston to Beaumont, making several stops along the route. The cell phone ping data provided crucial timestamps, allowing investigators to determine when Laquanta had last been in contact with friends and family. The locations indicated she had been in proximity to a residential apartment on Ashley Street at the same time a man later identified as Thaddeus McCray was recorded at the same location. This intersection of location data narrowed the suspect pool, focusing investigators on individuals connected to that address. Digital evidence also included attempts by the victim to contact family members shortly before her disappearance, which showed unanswered calls and missed messages that later informed the timeline of her final hours. Mapping Laquanta's movements demonstrated a pattern. Multiple cell pings clustered around Tyrrell Park Road, suggesting she may have been forced to the area where her body was discovered. Other pings confirmed she had entered and exited the Ashley Street apartment, providing a clear link between her last confirmed locations and potential crime scenes. Combined with witness statements, this data allowed investigators to reconstruct a movement map, establishing a timeline that would be critical for the prosecution. Investigators' focus on the Ashley Street apartment came directly from the intersection of digital evidence, vehicle tracking, and witness statements. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses placed both Laquanta and McCray near the address on the evening prior to her death. Law enforcement obtained a search warrant for the residence, authorizing a thorough forensic search of the premises. Inside the apartment, police recovered multiple items of interest. Forensic teams collected samples from surfaces and objects, including clothing, furniture, and door handles, all subjected to DNA analysis. Blood evidence was found in multiple areas of the apartment, consistent with the victim's injuries. Forensic testing confirmed the presence of Laquanta's blood, establishing a clear connection between the apartment and the murder. In addition, personal items linked to the victim were discovered, including a purse and mobile device, corroborating the timeline established by cell phone pings. Investigators cataloged the items meticulously, noting their locations and condition. The significance of the Ashley Street apartment in the broader case was twofold. First, it provided physical evidence linking the victim to a secondary location prior to her death. Second, it established a direct connection to the suspect, as McCray resided there and had been observed entering and exiting the apartment during the time frame in question. The combination of physical and digital evidence from this location became foundational to the case against the suspect. Following the identification of the Ashley Street apartment as a critical location, investigators focused on the resident, Thaddeus McCray, a 34-year-old man with prior encounters with law enforcement. Records indicated a history of assaults and probation violations. At the time of Laquanta's death, McCray was on probation for a previous aggravated assault charge. Investigators also reviewed reports of prior domestic disputes and incidents of violent behavior associated with him, establishing a pattern of aggression. McCray's relationship to the victim was a key component in narrowing the investigation. Witness statements identified him as a person in her proximity during the hours preceding her death. Neighbors and acquaintances reported seeing him at or near the Ashley Street apartment in coordination with the victim's phone activity. Investigators also documented behavioral patterns consistent with controlling or threatening tendencies, which, when combined with his criminal history, positioned him as the primary suspect. The arrest of McCray followed a collection of corroborating evidence, including surveillance footage, digital records, and forensic analysis from the apartment. Law enforcement had sufficient probable cause to charge him with murder based on the accumulation of data linking him to the victim and crime scenes. Constructing a prosecutable case required integrating multiple forms of evidence: witness statements, physical evidence, and digital records. Investigators interviewed individuals close to the suspect, including neighbors and acquaintances, to determine his movements and behavior in the hours leading up to the victim's death. Some witnesses reported seeing inconsistencies between his accounts of events and digital evidence from cell phones and surveillance footage. Physical evidence collected from both the primary and secondary locations established direct links between the suspect and the crime. DNA analysis confirmed the presence of the victim's blood in areas of the Ashley Street apartment associated with the suspect. In addition, fibers and other trace materials provided corroboration of interactions between the suspect and the victim prior to her death. Contradictions in witness statements were examined carefully. Investigators compared these to digital records, including GPS pings, text messages, and phone call logs. The alignment of location data with physical evidence created a cohesive timeline, illustrating the sequence of events from the victim's departure from Houston, her movements in Beaumont, and the final confrontation leading to her death. Digital evidence played a particularly critical role. GPS pings confirmed the victim's presence at the apartment and identified times when she was in transit to Tyrrell Park Road, where her body was ultimately found. Combined with surveillance footage capturing McCray's presence, this allowed the prosecution to demonstrate that the suspect's location overlapped with the victim's during key periods. Prosecutors formulated their theory of events around the convergence of the suspect and the victim at the Ashley Street apartment, followed by subsequent movements to Tyrrell Park Road. Evidence indicated that McCray, leveraging access to the apartment and opportunity, was responsible for the actions leading to Laquanta's death. The prosecution emphasized the integration of digital, physical, and testimonial evidence to establish motive, presence, and direct involvement. The investigative team systematically documented all findings, ensuring that the chain of custody for evidence remained intact and that digital records were properly preserved for courtroom presentation. The combined use of forensic evidence, cell phone data, and witness statements allowed investigators to not only identify the suspect, but also reconstruct the timeline of the crime in precise detail, forming the basis of the pending legal proceedings. Following the discovery of Laquanta Edwards' body on December 5, 2025, in Beaumont, Texas, law enforcement worked swiftly to identify a suspect. Within days, investigators focused on 34-year-old Thaddeus McCray, who had known associations with Edwards. McCray's prior criminal history, including documented probation for assault-related offenses, made him a person of interest early in the investigation. Surveillance data, eyewitness accounts, and digital evidence from the victim's phone collectively indicated that McCray had been in contact with Edwards in the hours preceding her death, establishing a timeline that placed him at critical locations connected to the homicide. Investigators obtained search warrants for McCray's residence on Ashley Street, uncovering physical evidence that tied him to the crime. Blood samples and other forensic traces corroborated movements outlined in cell phone ping data and witness statements. With sufficient evidence, authorities prepared to take McCray into custody. McCray was apprehended on December 7, 2025, 2 days after the body was discovered. Police executed the arrest in the late morning hours at his apartment. Law enforcement coordinated with the local Beaumont Police Department and the Criminal Investigation Division to ensure the operation was conducted safely and in accordance with procedural standards. During the arrest, officers documented the sequence of events and the suspect's responses to ensure accountability and accuracy in legal proceedings. The arrest followed standard protocol. Officers first secured the perimeter, ensuring that bystanders were kept at a safe distance and that the scene could be documented without interference. A warrant was presented, and McCray was formally advised of his rights. The timeline from the initiation of the arrest to his formal custody lasted approximately 1 hour, during which all evidence handling and procedural measures were meticulously recorded. McCray's residence on Ashley Street was a one-story apartment complex in a residential area. Police reports indicate that the location presented no immediate risk to officers or bystanders, though standard precautions were maintained due to McCray's history. The apartment was searched systematically for items relevant to the case, including any clothing, weapons, or personal belongings that could be linked to the homicide. The apprehension process was coordinated with multiple units to ensure documentation, chain of custody, and adherence to legal requirements. Officers utilized body cameras to record interactions, providing a clear record of the circumstances surrounding the arrest. McCray was secured in handcuffs and placed in a law enforcement vehicle for transport to the Beaumont Police Department, where he was processed and booked formally. During the arrest, McCray reportedly remained compliant and did not resist officers. Police documented his demeanor, noting verbal responses, physical conduct, and interactions with law enforcement personnel. While compliant, McCray refrained from offering statements or explanations regarding the allegations, invoking his right to legal counsel. All interactions were recorded to preserve evidence and maintain transparency in the arrest process. Documentation of the suspect behavior is significant, as it provides context for subsequent proceedings and contributes to the overall record of law enforcement engagement. No physical altercations or additional incidents occurred during custody, allowing investigators to focus on evidence collection and initial processing. Following his arrest, McCray was formally charged with first-degree murder in the death of Laquanta Edwards. The complaint cited multiple aggravating factors, including the use of a knife and premeditation implied by prior interactions with the victim. Charges were filed in the Jefferson County court system, initiating formal legal proceedings. Additional charges were considered depending on the outcomes of ongoing forensic analysis, including possible possession of a weapon during a crime and obstruction of justice, if any evidence indicated attempt to conceal or alter crime scene information. The formal filing of charges marked a transition from criminal investigation to judicial proceedings, setting the stage for subsequent court appearances and legal scrutiny. The probable cause affidavit outlined the rationale for the arrest and prosecution of McCray. Key evidence included forensic traces found at both the discovery site and his residence, cell phone ping data establishing movements between locations, and witness testimony placing him with the victim prior to her death. Investigators highlighted the suspect's prior record and the pattern of behavior that aligned with the timeline of events surrounding Edwards' death. This overview provided a clear framework for the prosecution to present the case to a judge and establish a basis for initial bond hearings and subsequent court proceedings. Probable cause documentation is critical in ensuring the legal foundation of the case is sound and defensible in court. Following McCray's arrest, the judicial process commenced with an initial appearance in the Jefferson County Court. During the first court appearance, McCray was presented before a judge to formally hear the charges and enter a plea. He appeared with legal counsel, and the proceedings adhered to standard criminal procedure. The judge reviewed the probable cause documentation and ensured the suspect understood the charges filed against him. No plea was entered at this stage, and the focus remained on procedure requirements, ensuring the suspect's rights were upheld and establishing the framework for the trial process. A bond hearing followed the initial appearance. The prosecution recommended a substantial bond, citing the severity of the charges, potential risk to the community, and evidence linking the suspect to crime. The judge set bond at $1.5 million, reflecting both the violent nature of the offense and McCray's prior criminal history. The bond decision considered multiple factors: the likelihood of flight, the suspect's past compliance with probation, and the risk posed to witnesses or the general public. Setting a high bond ensured that McCray would remain in custody while allowing for due process and the preparation of both prosecution and defense cases. In addition to the monetary bond, the judge established conditions for any potential release, which included regular check-ins with law enforcement, travel restrictions, and prohibitions on contact with the victim's family or witnesses. These conditions were standard practice in first-degree murder cases, aimed at mitigating risk and maintaining the integrity of the investigation. The prosecution filed initial motions to preserve evidence, restrict communication regarding the case, and prevent witness tampering. These included requests for forensic examinations to continue unimpeded and for any digital evidence obtained to remain in police custody. The prosecution also moved to revoke any probationary privileges McCray previously held, highlighting the relevance of his criminal history to the current charges. The defense maintained a cautious early strategy, invoking the suspect's right to remain silent and requesting access to all evidence collected. Defense counsel focused on challenging procedural points and ensuring that the suspect's legal rights were fully protected throughout the investigation and pretrial phase. This included reviewing search warrants, questioning evidence collection methods, and preparing for potential motions to suppress certain items or testimony. The family of Laquanta Edwards expressed concern over her death and focused on ensuring that the investigation remained thorough. Statements from relatives emphasized their reliance on law enforcement and the justice system to address the crime. Family members requested privacy and allowed the process to proceed without interference, cooperating with investigators as necessary. Community members and family organized vigils to honor Edwards' memory. These gatherings served as a public acknowledgement of her life and reinforced the seriousness of the incident. Memorials included moments of silence, reflection, and calls for safety awareness in the surrounding neighborhoods. The case prompted heightened public concern regarding safety in the Beaumont area. Residents expressed unease over violent incidents and emphasized the importance of community vigilance. Law enforcement increased patrols and engaged with neighborhood associations to provide information and guidance on protective measures. Community leaders and advocacy groups call for accountability at multiple levels, including law enforcement oversight and monitoring of individuals on probation. These calls emphasize the need for systemic review of supervision processes to prevent similar tragedies. Laquanta's children and immediate family faced the long-term consequences of her loss. The legal proceedings, public attention, and ongoing investigation created a complex environment for grieving while navigating the procedural requirements of the case. Support systems were engaged to ensure the family received counseling and assistance throughout the judicial process. McCray's criminal history, including prior probation, raised questions about the adequacy of monitoring and risk assessment procedures. Authorities and legal experts analyzed whether intervention or closer supervision could have prevented escalation to homicide. The investigation prompted scrutiny of interactions between McCray and law enforcement before the murder. Analysts highlighted instances where closer monitoring or proactive engagement might have identified risk factors earlier, potentially altering outcomes. The case revealed gaps in coordination between agencies, including probation offices, police departments, and community monitoring systems. Legal analysts emphasized the need for comprehensive protocols for individuals with violent histories and ongoing supervision requirements. The murder underscored concerns about community safety, particularly in residential areas with vulnerable populations. Residents and officials highlighted the importance of communication between law enforcement and the public, crime prevention programs, and community awareness campaigns. Investigators continue to analyze forensic evidence, including DNA results, digital communications, and witness accounts. Ongoing analysis aims to provide a complete understanding of the sequence of events leading to Edwards' death. The trial is anticipated to proceed after pretrial motions, evidence review, and jury selection. Dates of the trial remain subject to scheduling, legal motions, and preparation by both prosecution and defense teams. Primary issues include the intent and premeditation of the crime, the credibility of witness statements, and the accuracy of forensic evidence linking the suspect to Edwards. Both sides are expected to dispute interpretations of digital data and physical evidence. The prosecution must establish beyond a reasonable doubt that McCray caused Edwards' death intentionally and with premeditation. This includes corroborating forensic evidence, eyewitness accounts, and timeline consistency. The defense may challenge procedural elements of evidence collection, the reliability of digital data, witness credibility, and the interpretation of forensic analysis. Strategic motions may also focus on limiting or excluding certain evidence from trial. As of early 2026, McCray remains in custody, charged with first-degree murder. Legal proceedings continue with pretrial motions, evidence review, and preparation for trial. Investigators have established a timeline, identified a suspect, and linked physical evidence to crime. However, questions regarding motive, potential prior warning signs, and the full sequence of events before the discovery of Edwards' body remain under investigation. The Edwards family faces ongoing legal, emotional, and practical challenges. The trial will determine accountability, but the broader consequences, including public attention, community safety, and systemic scrutiny, will persist. The case remains significant for its implications regarding criminal supervision, community safety, and forensic investigation protocols. Lessons drawn from the investigation may inform future policy, law enforcement practice, and public awareness, ensuring that similar tragedies are addressed proactively. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.